From the WATE.com Digital Center, answering your legal questions. This is Ask Isaacs. Now, here's Lori Tucker and attorney Ray.
Hi, everyone. So good to have you with us today. I'm Lori Tucker, along with our legal analyst, Greg Isaacs. And we are talking today about primary elections and some weird, controversial laws, especially here in Tennessee about primaries. But before we get into that and remind you what's going on with primary elections in Tennessee, let's talk about New Hampshire and what happened yesterday.
Well, you know, it's interesting with the changes in Tennessee law as it relates to crossover voting in primaries. You know, we didn't really know how it was going to play out once the presidential election cycle started, and New Hampshire really gave us a small taste of what to expect.
New Hampshire is interesting in and of itself before we get into all that. Their primary election occurs first in the country because of a law that they mandated this, back in 1975?
Right. Imagine this. New Hampshire has their state legislature passed a law that says we get to go in front of the line every year. So crazy state law that they have preempted all the other schedules.
Yeah.
And that's why historically New Hampshire goes first. But it's a state that allows people to vote in primaries that are not declared / independents. And what we saw in New Hampshire last night, basically Nikki Haley only got 30% of the GOP vote, but she racked up undeclared independent votes.
Very interesting. And she's saying, hey, that's why I'm not saying I'm giving up just yet. I'm still going for it.
And so what in the world does that have to do with us here in East Tennessee?
Yeah, we're going to trickle down to that because they don't use the word bona fide in New Hampshire, do they, Greg?
They would not pronounce it that way.
Bona fide.
Bona fide. Bona fide. But you know, it's interesting. You have basically open primary states, which we used to be.
And we still are technically, aren't we?
Still are technically, but just like Georgia, states like Michigan, then there are closed primary states.
New York?
New York and Florida. And what's a closed primary state? That means simply that you have to be a member of a particular political party to vote in that specific primary. You can't cross over.
In other words, and we talked about this last time, you can't vote for the person. And so many people say, I'm sick of voting for party, I want to vote for the person and their platform. And you can't do that under this.
Right. And so fast forward to Tennessee, who in 2016, we were the 49th ranked state in voter turnout. In 2022, we were the 46th state in voter turnout.
And you're looking at the overall average numbers, including presidential primaries. I mean, that's really baffling.
It's shocking.
We're not just talking local elections here, which should have a better turnout.
And instead of enacting legislation to help encourage voting, what we see is a tendency to chill voter participation in voting in the state of Tennessee. But let's talk about this public law that just was enacted that has sparked a very controversial federal lawsuit with ex-Ambassador Ashe, ex-Knoxville City Mayor Victor Ashe. But it's interesting. And what this law does, Lori, is basically criminalizes crossover voting in the state of Tennessee. And what that means is, unless you are a, quote, bona fide member of and it's hard to say with a straight face.
It is.
A bona fide member of a political party, or you are affiliated with a political party, or at the polls, you declare your allegiance. I guess kind of like saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I hereby pledge to be a member of the Red Party or the Blue Party. It's a crime to vote. And not just any crime, a Class D felony, which if prosecuted and you were convicted, could carry 2 to 4 years.
Can you see people behind bars because they said, I'm going to vote this way, when really their registration says
it is
the opposite?
Remarkable.
I mean, really.
And you know, the unfortunate part of it is in places like Tennessee that's now solidly red most of the time. If you want to vote for a person or your friend that happens to be red if you're blue, or blue if you're red, now you have the problem in dynamic of saying, am I going to be prosecuted because I'm not a member of that party?
Would this really hold water? I mean, do we have enough time for this?
Well-
The courts are already overwhelmed. As former Mayor Ash said, what is happening here?
What is happening here? And let me tell you how absurd this statutory mechanism is. The way in theory is going to work, if somebody challenges you, now I don't know how this is going to happen, if they throw a foul like they do, a flag like in the NFL, and say, Lori Tucker, you are in the wrong primary, I hereby challenge you, an election official or an election judge can question you, they can take your ballot, give you a paper ballot instead of an electronic, fold it up, put it in an envelope, and write void. And you can, I guess, go to Chancery Court one day after the election to fight for your constitutional right.
That was my next
vote.
question. Isn't that against our constitutional right?
Well, it is. And Mayor Ash, the League of Women's Voters, and others in their lawsuit have said two things. Basically, that this law is unconstitutionally overbroad and vague. And what's that mean? It means simply our Supreme Court has said laws to be constitutional have to put someone of ordinary intelligence on notice of the prohibited conduct. Well,
They have to be bona fide.
And I don't know what being bona fide.
That word.
If you have to be born again, if you have to be bona fide, if you have to be baptized, what you have to do to join a political party in Tennessee.
A lot of people have asked me and have sent emails into the newsroom saying, okay, so because they have said, I have gone in, my voter registration card says this, I'm a Republican, but, I'm quoting, but then they may go in and state, I'm going to vote Democrat. They can check your registration and that can get you in trouble?
In theory, they could. If a prosecutor who is charged with getting the bad guys off the streets, the homicides, the rapes, sexual assaults, the robberies, now are going to be the election crossover police. Remarkable. And then, can you imagine the embarrassment and humiliation if someone challenges you as you're exercising your right to vote? And the Victor Ashe lawsuit also says it violates my First Amendment right to political speech, one of our most fundamental constitutional freedoms and safeguards. We have now turned that into some type of something.
It's a scary thing when you think about it.
And it doesn't matter which party it is, but to encourage or prohibit people from not voting for the person as opposed to a party is a very chilling precedent. And actually, when you juxtapose New Hampshire and this new law under Tennessee, it's really commonsensical if you are an independent or, quote, not declared to allow you to vote the person, because the way politics is so mercurial these days, acrimonious, I change party affiliations every hour on the hour, depending on how absurd the positions
become. Who you're watching and when.
Who you're watching and when, or you pick up Instagram. So, but if you think about it, the tremendous chilling effect it would have if you, and most people here may have at one point in their lifetime voted in a different primary. I know I have to support my friends that run for office. And I would hate to sit there and think, as I go to express my right, my political right, it's just not something that they let me do. Tennessee legislature, it is our right to express our First Amendment right to political speech and vote. And to try to take that away from you because you're afraid that a party is going to somehow influence the other party's candidate, I think the federal court is going to have short shrift with this.
When do you think they are going to look at this?
Well, I checked on the electronic court filing system this morning, and there's not been a trial date that popped up. So typically pretty soon, but things in federal court typically move at their own pace. This is a case where there has been a motion to dismiss for lack of standing and other things. So we'll see. But really remarkable, and as we sit here, Lori, and imagine you are John Q. Public and you walk into that voting booth and you get challenged in some of these smaller communities and someone asks you, the threat of going to jail, are you a bona fide red person or blue person, Ms. Tucker?
Well, and they're putting handcuffs on the voters, is what they're doing.
Literally and figuratively.
There you go.
So, and the other thing is, this just isn't a misdemeanor that you could be charged with. It is a serious felony, a Class D felony under Tennessee law. But
Do you think this will be settled before the election?
I don't know that it will. So that's going to be really interesting to see. And I think in the good old state of Tennessee, we're actually going to see places where I think people that are the poll watchers, the election chairman, whatever, try to use and wield this law indiscriminately. So I think the Court of Appeals, as is the federal court, are going to be inundated with cases challenging this if someone tries to prohibit someone from voting.
I mean, yeah, say it does go through. We're at election day with the primaries, and you walk in and there's a sign. You know, they said there could be a sign.
That's great. Oh, no, that could be under this new law.
They
are
be
required to post an 8.5 by 11 sign that says, if you are not a bona fide member or affiliated with a political party or declare your allegiance, it is a crime. So that's part of the potential chilling effect, that not only is it a possibility, you're going to be faced with that when you walk in. And think about this, when you exercise your vote, it's one of the most religious, secular experiences we have, because it's how we choose and run our government.
And that feeling of power and pride when you walk out and you have the stickers. So are they going to have stickers that have the line going through?
And think about this, the confidentiality when you close that curtain or whatever. And so it's going to be really remarkable. But, you know, if you think about it here once again, as we've seen all too frequently, instead of people having an impact at the ballot box, now you have to use the jury box. And I think what you're going to see is not the voters, but the judiciary having to step in and correct this, because the legislature, and why I think they did it this way, one, I think clearly it's to chill voting. It's not to encourage voting. When you threaten to throw someone in the Tennessee Department of Corrections,
make people afraid to go.
You make them afraid. But also, I think it's a practical matter, since you don't register as a Republican or a Democrat. Typically, when you get your voter registration card, it's hard to undo what we've done for years when you're an open primary state. But, you know, it's going to be interesting how this plays out in federal court, and I think people are going to be watching. And, you know, I guess everyone needs to do some soul searching and determine if you're a bona fide member of a political party or not. And then, you know, think about this. And there's actually some verbiage on the oath that you have to take if somebody challenges your affiliation in that primary. Then if you're sworn and they determine that you weren't truthful, then you've committed perjury.
Does that tack on more time then?
Another felony under Tennessee law. So, you know, it's actually, you know, that's the problem. Once you open Pandora's box legally, it's hard to get all the things that come out back in. So, you know, I think this law was poorly drafted. I think it was poorly thought out. And but then again, now.
Well, let's go. Well, one second. I don't mean to interrupt you here, but let's go back to New York and Florida. They're closed.
They're closed, and that's fine.
But they don't have the word bona fide. It's a totally different situation.
A totally different situation. So if you're going to be a closed primary state, be a closed primary state. And this isn't being pro crossover, not crossover. This is the issue is, and the legal impediment and problems that we're seeing is it is so vague, it can put people in jeopardy that don't know that they're going to be in jeopardy.
Yeah.
And it's just literally impossible to enforce, because, you know, political party affiliation is something that you weren't born with tattooed on your forehead. It ebbs, it flows, it changes, and to sit there and
it's deeply personal. A lot of people don't like to talk about what their party affiliation is.
That's why you close the curtain when you go to the voting booth. So really interesting to see how the courts attack this, but it'll be interesting, and I hope that we're not talking about it, to see the first person that is prosecuted for crossover primary voting in this election season.
Can you imagine? All right, let's talk more about this at 5:30.
Let's do it.
All right, thanks for joining us, everyone, and weigh in. Let us know what you think about this.